Greetings, traveler. Recently, I had several conversations with people I know inside the games industry and outside, specifically about how to start developing a brand new game, given that you have no studio, no budget, no team that's already ready there to start, and basically you have to start from scratch. Everybody in that situation thinks that looking for investors is the only way to move forward. But I think there is a way better alternative. So what I want to do today is cover that very initial phase bootstrap type of situation, give you an outline from my experience what the typical investor route would look like, and then give you what I think is a better alternative for starting to create a brand new game from scratch and getting together the budget, the money, and the skills you need to get started, and how I would approach this problem anyway. If you don't know who I am, my name is Xanthos. I've been working in the games industry for about 15 years now, and when someone wants to start working on a new game, typically they think they need an enormous budget, a grand team of maybe 100 people or more, lots of high quality assets, many well-paid programmers, and so on and so forth. And that's not to say that if you had these things, you couldn't make a nice game. Of course you could, but what if you're in the opposite situation? What if you're just one person with just a few skills, and you have a pretty good concept of what kind of a game you want to create, and you want to move forward just with that? Well, people in that case, from many conversations I had recently, as I mentioned, think that, well, it's impossible. First of all, it's impossible to start working on a new game unless you have all these things, team, money, and skills and all that. So the most difficult thing to get over is money, because while you're working on this fantastic game, you still need to pay rent and all that. So some investor needs to come in and believe in you and give you a bunch of money, and with that you can pay rent while you're developing this game. So that is a dream, right? That is the ideal situation. But if you think about it, that's not an ideal situation at all, because you may be thinking, well, if you have this money, then you don't need to worry about rent and you can focus on the game, right? Otherwise, how are you supposed to make this game while you're still having to do some other work or work for some unrelated company doing some unrelated job? Well, the first myth here that I want to focus on is that is really no different from the investor route. So finding that person who will believe in you and want to invest in your idea itself requires effort and time. So unless your grandfather is this grand billionaire who doesn't mind giving you a good chunk of his fortune for a 5-minute conversation, then yeah, that could work, I suppose. But in all other situations, finding that person that believes in your idea so much, first of all, requires time. So you would have to spend a good time of your time going out, looking for these people, describing what it is that you want to do, and hopefully convincing them that this is something worth them investing into. Now, again, this is my experience. I hope there's people who can have this turn out easier than what I'm describing, but most of the time people like that will need to see some sort of concrete evidence that what you have is indeed a good product, and it will make sense for them to invest in it. So 99.9% of the cases, the investor wants to get more money than what they put in when the game goes on sale or when they finally own the game. Because that's usually the agreement there. They give all this money up front so they can own part or all of the game when it's completed and is on sale. So when you're putting in this time to search for people like that, you don't only need the time, but you need to already have invested some time in producing convincing materials. By the way, an interesting thing of living in Tokyo is that you get all sorts of little vans that run around the city yelling big announcements. Usually they're political campaign related, but not always. Anyway, a nice feature of the city. Sorry for the background noise. Anyway, so you won't be able to quickly find that person and quickly get them to give you money, right? So you'll need to spend a lot of time, network a lot, which is something that game developers typically don't like to do. We like to focus on crafting a game, not so much on talking to people, convincing them, making presentations and pitches, making presentation material and so on. But already to get to that point, you see how you need quite a bit of time to create all this material and then to do the actual networking to even get to talk to potential investors. People think that this process is quick for some reason, that you can go to a couple of events, spend maybe 2 to 4 hours of your time and find this magical person that will throw money at you. My experience from being involved in conversations like that and from seeing people wanting to do the same is that this conversation is the opposite of easy and fast. It is never quick, so you will never be able to find that person in just a couple of quick and easy conversations. And even if you do, then providing enough evidence for that person to be convinced with their knowledge and their background and their experience is a tremendously involved process, because the same money they have available to invest in your project, they could just as easily invest in some other project or the S&P 500 or some savings account or any of the other thousands of options that are available for investment. So should you choose to go down that route, then you will need to do that in parallel with your day job or whatever it is you're doing at the moment for money. So already we have that situation where the dream where you just get money to develop the game doesn't get to happen unless you spend all that time and effort to find that perfect investor for your game. And you will need to do this process while working, and this process in all likelihood will take several months, most likely several years, of you actively pursuing this opportunity. And then once you actually find that ideal investor, you will still need to spend several months and again, most likely years, to get the game state and then the team state and the company state in a situation where they feel comfortable investing the full amount despite their initial agreement of whatever they said they can invest in the beginning. So from the time they said they can invest, let's say $1 million, to the point where that $1 million hits your account or hits your company's account so you can actually pay salaries, that takes quite a long time. Not to say that this approach is impossible, but here's the thing that I noticed. And I think the other approach that is quite viable, if not more viable, than going with the traditional investor route. And that is simply using the time you would have used for this investor hunt to actually develop the game. And here you might be thinking, well, of course, but if I could develop my own game, I would have done it already, right? The whole point is that I'm missing the skills and the team and the knowledge and, of course, the money to pay rent while I'm 100% focused on this new game. And that's a fair argument, but you have to keep in mind that you are in the same situation anyway. So if you went the investor route, you would still have to have another job to pay the rent while hunting down the investors to pay you to be able to focus 100% on the game. So doing things this way doesn't subtract anything from your life. And if you're the kind of person who likes to focus on the game crafting aspect of the process more than the networking and looking for investors and pitching to them part of the process, then perhaps this is more appealing. So if you were to go down this path, how is this better than the traditional investor approach? Well, assuming that you start working on this game with your limited skills and your limited time and perhaps the limited number of team members who are available to work on this, then little by little, you would build up the skills and the people and the quality of the game the more you work on it, even if you can only work on it part-time, even if you can only work on it during the weekends. Because remember, those are what you have available right now anyway, so you're not losing anything by going down this route. And now you're wondering, okay, yes, I could do that, but how is that better than just finding an investor who can give me virtually infinite money? Well, once the game is in a good enough state to be played by other people, and hopefully in a state to be enjoyed by other people, then it transforms from a strange little prototype into an actual product. And products can be sold for money because of what they are, right? Even if a game is not complete and not perfect, if it manages to entertain someone, then you could potentially sell it for money. And here you're thinking, but wait a minute, how can I sell an incomplete game that I made on my own for lots of money? In fact, enough to be able to support myself and to turn it into this grand, amazing product. That's a very first question, very fair question. Let's see exactly how this would work out. So once the game is good enough to be played, hopefully with some basic graphics so people can understand what the theme of the game is, so the game is past the gray box prototype stage, then once someone plays it, they can assign a value to it. So let's say if this game would have a theoretical price of $20 per unit once it's completed, then if that game is only 10% complete, then perhaps it's worth $2. And this is just an example. You can adjust the price to whatever you feel comfortable with. And this is where the magic happens, really. Once someone feels comfortable buying the game for $2 based on its current state, then you have a real customer and you have someone who genuinely likes the game even in its current state and genuinely wants to support you and this project. And if at least one person like this exists, then there is a fair chance that other people like this exist. So you don't have to only sell it to one person, you can find similar people and also sell the game to them. And then the next question becomes, well, okay, this is good and all, but how do I make a living with like $2 here and $3 there and so on? Excellent question. So once you are in that state where people have already bought the game and already enjoyed to a certain extent, then you have a small audience that can give you feedback that can make the game better already in its current state. So first of all, a game that's better than what you sold for $2 would probably get a higher price than the $2 you sold it for. Additionally, people like that can give you ideas and requests for features they want to see in the game. So extra levels, extra characters, extra weapons and power-ups and abilities and unlockables and chat features and online features and all that wonderful group of things that we're used to seeing in major titles. So for someone who has already bought a game, it makes a lot of sense to pay a little bit more for a little extra content. That's what we do with DLC nowadays as gamers anyway. So once someone gets the feature they requested from you, whether it's additional levels or weapons or whatever, then it makes sense for that additional content to have an additional price. And given that they told you specifically what it is that they want, then you have very good reason to believe that they will want to buy it. So if someone says, your game is pretty cool with that male character, I wish I could also select a female character, and you say, well, would you be willing to pay me, I don't know, $10, $15, whatever, $3, whatever price you think is appropriate for this extra character, then the person who requested it already knows that they paid, let's say, $2 for the base game, so paying a bit more for that extra character would make a lot of sense, specifically when they told you in their own words that this is what they want. And so, in this way, you know right from the horse's mouth, essentially, what your specific player base wants to see in the game and what they would be willing to pay for and wait for and are excited about, which is a vastly better state than most games that are released on a global level, because those games are typically developed in a vacuum, and the general public or even the beta testing group only gets to see them just around the completion time. So for the vast majority of development, they are essentially developed in a vacuum. So now you're thinking, okay, so I added these extra features and a couple of people bought these extra features. I'm still not making millions with this game, so how am I supposed to support myself? Still, a little bit of patience, because this is where the process is getting good. All you need to do at this point is keep doing exactly what you've been doing. So, talking to more people, asking them to play the game. If they like it, they can buy the game. If they want, they can request features. If they want, they can purchase additional content. Without knowing it and without realizing, you have started a video game business and you have vastly superior quality of data from your real life, real people players who you know by name and have direct contact with. And that's something that most studios out there don't have, because like we said, they develop this grand product in a vacuum and then they sell it hoping for the best. You don't have to rely on hope. You know exactly what your real players want, what they think, and what they want to see next in the game. And simply by continuing this process, the game on its own, one day, maybe sooner, maybe later, depending on your rate of progress, will reach in such a good and such a solid state that people will want to share it of their own accord without you having to do basically any social media or any promotion yourself, that they will ask you for it, or they will ask you for the new version, or they will ask a version where you fix XYZ bug or you add ABC feature. And once the game has good enough base quality for people who have never played it before to want to pick it up, then not only you have a video game business, but you have a live functioning, naturally expanding, so organically expanding video game business, which is just about the closest thing there is to the holy grail of video game companies, I suppose. A product so good that people just want to get more of it, to get more features of, and want to share with their friends without you telling them to do so, and without you having to do any of that promotion as the developer themselves. And here you're thinking, yeah, okay, I could see how that could scale eventually over time, but how on earth is this better than going the investor route? Well, it's better in two critical ways. First of all, if you went the investor route, you would have to spend a lot of time searching and convincing and pitching people about a product that essentially doesn't exist. So having this product essentially removes the need to find someone to support you, because once the game has good enough quality, maybe 3 months into development, maybe 6 months, maybe 1 year, which is time you would have spent hunting down investors anyway, and you would have improved the game 0% in the meantime. So instead, you have an actual product that not only has been proven by its own target audience to have good enough quality, but guess what? It's generating revenue on its own, out of its own quality, even without an investor in the picture and without you having to pitch anyone anything. So that's the first reason why this approach is better. You end up with what you wanted all along. You working on a real game that can create real revenue. So the other reason why this approach is superior to simply looking for an investor is let's say that you start working on this game and you are 3 months in or 6 months in and so on, and you keep working on it. When you have this product that is playable and real and tested by real people, and you have data from the real world about how many people like it and how many people enjoy it, you know what? If you really want to, and if the money you're making with this game is just not enough for you and you want a lot more sooner, of course, at the expense of ownership of your own game, because the investors will want something back for their money, then you know what? You could spend 2 hours per week or 4 hours per week or something joining networking events or sending emails to investors or trying to meet with investment companies who are in this space, or asking your friends from inside the games industry and outside if they know someone who would want to support this kind of product. And given that you spend the rest of your available time on the development of the actual game, then spending that time looking for investors or other supporters, if that is what you desire, is still possible in this approach. And even if you find no one, basically you don't care, because your product still grows, still becomes better with every day you work on it, and still can be shared with more and more people, and generate revenue that way. So the beautiful part of this process is that with or without an investor, I would argue from my experience that not worrying about investors at all is the superior approach. The game itself, one day, just by you pouring all your love and all your passion into it and improving it day after day, it will reach a point where it is on its own accord an excellent product. You have managed to chip away all the bugs and all the problems it had over the years. You know what these problems are because you have direct contact with the people who are playing the game, and you can, if not see them actually play the game when you share it with them, then at least get to ask them again, like, what did you think of the game? Like, where did you get stuck? Did you have any issues running the game? Did it run well on your computer, on your mobile, on your console, or whatever? And they can tell you directly what the problems were, and you can work on them knowing that they are affecting real people and they're not just some theoretical analytic on some random dashboard. And more importantly, you know what people who already played the game and finished it, or at least played a percentage of it, would like to see next. Is it more characters, or is it more weapons for the existing characters? Is it more levels, or is it a new game plus mode where everything is the undead version of that world, for example? And you know this information not from what you imagine, not from something an imaginary business market analyst told you because that's what he thinks. You know it from the real people and the real players who played the game for real, maybe even in front of your eyes. So you can see exactly where they got stuck, exactly what problems they faced, how you can help them, and how you can give them exactly what they ask for. And once you start building income this way, the only thing that can happen is you can work on the game and make it even better, which will of course lead to even more income. And that leads you to what I mentioned is the holy grail of game development, a game so good that people just want to play it more, they want to share it more, and they want you to keep working on it, and they'll be happy to buy anything that improves how much pleasure they can have out of this product. Anyway, these are my thoughts on the topic. This is what I've shared with people who asked me what's the best way to approach this investor situation. I said, well, if you like to keep all the profit to yourself, well, this is one option. And if you're going to make a game anyway, might as well start today instead of 5 years later after you're disappointed with a potential investor search. But then again, perhaps things will go well for you and someone will want to give you infinite money with very little to expect in return. So that's also a possibility. Anyway, these are my thoughts on the topic. I would love to hear your experience with this, and if you have a better approach to navigate this situation, of course, I would be very interested to find out about that too. In the meantime, thank you so much, as always, for watching. And of course, don't forget to have fun.